Welcome to the Ghostly Gallery podcast, a place where we explore the world of horror and mystery in film, literature, popular culture, and lots of other things too. Well, greetings, everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Bruce Markison. As always, I'm joined by co-host and producer Tracy Asteria. So, Tracy, as we embark on our milestone 150th episode, how are you doing?
Really, really good, Bruce. I'm excited. This is 150 episodes. We have come a long way, and this is a huge milestone.
Yeah, it is. And if I asked you to try to remember all 150 episodes and all the guests, how many do you think you'd be able to come up with?
You know what? I think I probably could come up with 150, maybe not in
Really?
actual order. Yes. Oh, yes, yes. We've had so many
You have that
great
kind of
guests.
memory.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. It's kind of embedded into my brain. But it's been so interesting with so many great people and so many return guests. It's been such a wild ride.
Yeah. I think I'd be able to remember most of the guests, maybe some of the other episodes where we just talked about movies between ourselves or talked about other themes. Might be a little harder to recall those. Not that, we didn't enjoy doing those shows, but when you have a guest, it kind of sticks in your mind a little bit more.
Yes.
And similarly, this week, I'm excited about this guest. Well, I'm always excited about our guests, but this is a topic that I really am interested in doing. Our guest tonight is an author, Samuel Garza Bernstein. Not only is he an author, he's a screenwriter, director. He has written about a number of Hollywood icons. But on this episode specifically, we're going to talk to Samuel about his new book, just came out this year, Roddy McDowall, An Actor's Life. This is the first ever biography of this award-winning child star, who then found even more success as an adult actor, becoming well known for his work in the original Planet of the Apes series of films, and also adding to his fame through horror films like The Legend of Hell House and the iconic Fright Night. And McDowall also starred in The Twilight Zone and Rod Serling's Night Gallery. We're going to try to touch upon all those films and all those milestones with our guest author, Samuel Garza Bernstein. Samuel, welcome to the Ghostly Gallery. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, and congratulations on your 150th episode.
Thank you.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. It's it's not like writing 150 books. It's not quite that same accomplishment, not as time consuming, although it is more for Tracy because Tracy does all the technical work and the recordings and the editing. But it is a nice milestone for us to get to. And when you talk about milestones or numbers, you look at Roddy McDowall. He died nearly 30 years ago, 1998. And it's kind of unbelievable that it has taken this long for any writer to tackle his career in a full-length biography. Any idea why you think that's been the case?
Well, I think one reason might be that he had extensive archives at Boston University, and they were sealed until 25 years after his death. So they didn't open until 2023. I think I signed my contract to write the book in 2024. So I think, according to that timeline, it makes perfect sense. But I was initially very surprised that no one had written about him.
Wasn't there a rumor that it was a 100-year moratorium?
There was, but I think that was just sort of Hollywood, hyperbole.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. So, Samuel, you have written a number of books about Hollywood figures like Cesar Romero and Joan Crawford. What made you want to delve into the story of Roddy McDowall?
Well, I love stories about people who sort of give their all to everything they do. And, Roddy McDowall was somebody from a very early age, from the time he was a little boy. He just put everything into his work. And I relate to that because I've always been that way myself. And I think that's kind of a touchstone for me. It would be difficult for me to write about somebody who was, I don't know, sort of indifferent or lazy. I think about somebody like Marlon Brando, who was a wonderfully gifted actor and yet, was admittedly, rather lazy a lot of the time. And I think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could ever write about someone like that. So I think, and there are a lot of sort of touchstones in Roddy's life that I find very, very meaningful.
Oh, wonderful. So going back to kind of like his personal papers, and his archives and all that, how did you gain access to that? And tell us a little bit more about digging into that kind of information.
Well, it was I think 521 boxes. I think at some
Wow.
point it was like if he touched a piece of paper, he sent it to Boston University, and they cataloged it and indexed it, and went to town. The correspondence files are incredible, and they include a lot of copies, old-fashioned carbon copies of letters that he had written also. Because, you'd
Wow.
put a piece of carbon copy in the typewriter and create this second copy that would go in your own file. And that, from people like Noel Coward and, of course, his friends, Elizabeth Taylor and other people who weren't famous, and just from all the decades of his life, this massive amount of correspondence, but also his scripts. And from a very, very young age, he started making extensive notes in his
Mhm.
scripts about what he wanted to do, the performance that he wanted to create. And he was very methodical, very studious. And it's just it's amazing to be able to really get in touch with his creative process that way.
Mhm. Oh, wow. Oh, that must have been such a magical experience. I
Mm.
can't even imagine just having access to that kind of information. Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Samuel, one quick follow-up on that. Why Boston University? What was that connection to McDowell there?
It was a little murky. I'm not entirely sure. There wasn't a
Okay.
big paper trail about that piece of that puzzle because I wondered that myself. And Howard Gottlieb, who made the initial connection with Roddy, had some other people that Roddy knew that were part of the archive, but I'm not sure if there was a financial stake in it. I'm not sure.
Well, it's interesting. He was born in England, lived
Yeah.
a good part of his life in Hollywood. I believe he was in Southern California when he passed away back in
Yes.
1998. But somehow the Northeast, Northeastern College, a very good school, by the way, Boston University, turns out to have his archive. And that archive is still available to researchers. Samuel, I have heard it said numerous times that McDowell was so beloved in Hollywood that he literally had no enemies. I mean, is that an exaggeration or is it true?
I mean, I'm sure someone, didn't like him all that much. I'm not sure. But no, he was somebody who made a point of working well with others. And it didn't really matter if he liked someone or didn't like them. And, there were plenty of co-stars that he didn't particularly enjoy working with. but those co-stars wouldn't have really known that because he showed up, he did a professional
Mhm.
job, and he felt that it was on him. Particularly, he was often, in the later decades of his life, he was often kind of, one of the veterans on set. And he
Sure.
thought it was really important to set an example for younger cast members to show, you know what, we do this as a team. It doesn't matter where you are on the call sheet. We do this together as a team.
So it seems pretty much everybody liked him. There may have been a few exceptions out there. There were people that he didn't care for. I don't want you to go through a whole laundry list, but was there any name that maybe surprised you that he talked about in any of his papers, any of his letters, someone that he worked
Well,
with that he really maybe found difficult?
it does make me laugh that he was so relentlessly positive in the all the press tours of Cleopatra. And in one of his letters, he described the director, Joseph Mankiewicz, as something like a megalomaniacal son of a bitch. And
Ooh, wow.
I was like, yeah, I like seeing a little bit of that come through too.
Yeah.
So that was a little surprising to me because there wasn't a trail of comments here and there, but he really did not like Joseph Mankiewicz at all. I think he
Interesting.
also found a couple of other directors a little bit difficult to work with. And not because they were, famously as a child, he worked with people like Fritz Lang and John Ford, who could be very temperamental and very exacting. And he had a wonderful relationship with them. But sometimes he really didn't like it when a director was too focused on the technical side and sort of ignored the actors. And when he made the greatest, not the greatest show on earth. Oh my gosh, the greatest story ever told. The big biblical
Mhm.
epic directed by George Stevens. That dragged on for almost 2.5 years of shooting. He felt that way. He felt like it was all about, the Technicolor experience and not about the actors enough.
You mentioned one name there, Fritz Lang. I mean, that's going way back. I mean, Roddy McDowall, his career does go way back because he was a child actor, but that's early days of Hollywood there, or early days of movie
Yeah,
making, really.
yeah. And Fritz Lang with his little pirate eye patch, and there's little 12-year-old Roddy going, what does this man expect of me?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I know that your focus a lot is on horror and on the supernatural and thrillers and things. And I was thinking about how that might have started for Roddy, and really the seed of that, I think, is Shakespeare. He studied Shakespeare as a little boy and was learning
Hmm.
soliloquies. And famously, he was learning one of the soliloquies from, I think, Titus Andronicus when he was like a little boy. And if that's not a horror story, I don't know what is. Um, but I look back at his career, and if I think of the first kind of really supernatural character he played, it really was Ariel in The Tempest. So that goes all the way back to 1955. And, where he was really enjoying this process of creating really a supernatural, non-human character. And I think he loved
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, just an amazing history. You go so far back with McDowell and so many interesting connections along the way. Samuel, given that he was generally so well liked, did it make it easier for you to find people who are willing to talk about him? Sometimes when you're trying to write a book like this, you'll run into people that don't want to do interviews. Maybe they didn't like the person. They may have another reason. How was that experience for you? Were there a lot of turn downs, or did most people say, "Yeah, I'll talk about Roddy McDowell"?
Well, A lot of people said yes, and certainly William Ragsdale and Chris Sarandon from Fright Night talked with me, and some of the bigger names, if you will, they they were more reticent, but they turned out, once the book was written, though, they read the book and became very supportive of the project. It was too late to interview them, but people like Carol Burnett and Julie Andrews and Emma Thompson and Dolly Parton and Lily Tomlin and Jane Wagner and a bunch of other people have read the book once it was written. And these were all people that I tried to interview ahead of time. And I understood that they don't necessarily know what my angle is going to be, and they were very protective of and loved him very, very much. So I didn't take it personally when they wouldn't be interviewed, but I'm certainly very thankful that they are now so supportive of the project.
Oh, that is super. Those are some pretty big names. I know I'm a huge fan of Carol Burnett going back. Like I just remember like her programs, and I believe Roddy was a guest star on the Carol Burnett show, like maybe once or twice. And I do remember that. Oh, good times, good memories.
He was on the show several times, and they were very good friends. But the funniest time was when he showed up in a tuxedo, but with his Planet of the Apes mask on, as if it was just the most normal thing in the world. And then she's like, pretending to be like, very confused as why he's there. And he's like, well, I'm here to do my monologue. And then she thinks, oh, well, he's going to do something from Planet of the Apes. And he doesn't. He launches into a speech from Cleopatra. But and then they do a duet, and it's a marvelous performance. It was kind of cross promotion for when he was starring in the TV series version of Planet of the Apes in the same season for the same network, for CBS.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. That is so cool. So while you're researching this book, while you were reading the papers and interviewing people, was there anything that you discovered or that you learned about Roddy that really, really surprised you or just piqued your interest and made you want to dig a little bit deeper into it?
Well, one thing that I was very happily surprised to find was the complete normalization of his personal life. I mean, Roddy was a gay man. This was not something that you could be public about in his day. Right. But among his friends and colleagues, studio executives, agents, everyone acknowledged who his partners were, at whatever time of his life that it was. Like correspondence would be, give John my love, he sent me the funniest card. You two are so great together. And I was really very, pleased for him just to see that his private life was given the same kind of respect as anyone else's. And, and we're going back to like the late 50s. And so that was a little surprising to me, but happily so.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. I know back in the 50s that would be kind of surprising, just not as accepted as it is today, which is really surprising. Oh, that's fascinating. And I have one more question. And you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier with his Shakespearean acting and how that kind of prepared him for some of the horror genre roles that he had. So we know him from kind of like the Planet of the Apes and Fright Night, Twilight Zone, The Night Gallery. What else do you think made him such a great fit for those types of roles? And do you know, I guess, from reading some of his papers and researching him, if that was kind of like a preferred genre for him, if he really, really enjoyed it, or
Well,
what?
I know that he loved doing The Legend of Hell House.
Mhm.
He found that a wonderful project. And you can kind of, in the performance, you can see the sort of psychological mayhem that's going on inside of him as he's trying to put together this journey through something that's terrifying him, that he doesn't want to believe, but that he knows is true. And I think his commitment and his willingness to just, assume all of it
Mhm.
as a kind of very deep reality is what helped give real texture to those roles. Even in like which is a sort of take on the Golem story that he made. I think it was for Hammer. It you know he's playing for keeps, and when he's doing Fright Night, he might as well be playing Falstaff. I mean, he's just really that committed to creating a full human character. And I think when you talk about horror, it, I mean, sometimes with some kinds of, I don't know, some genres of horror, there's a certain tongue-in-cheek quality.
Mhm.
Now, with Roddy, that wasn't really how he played that stuff at all. It was deadly serious. And I think that gives the audience a feeling of being really transported into another world.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we love about horror and fantasy is feeling like this fantasy world is real, and that the stakes are high, and that the consequences will be real. And I think he really brought that alive.
I agree. I love that answer. Thank you.
Samuel, I think you have had access to my notes because I was going to ask you about that movie It next, and I'm still going to ask you about it. But
Okay.
now I know that you touched upon it in the book. It's not one of his well-known movies, although I think it's probably the first pure horror film that he did, full-length feature horror film. Came
I
out
think
in
so, yeah.
1967. And you mentioned it's about a golem, a creature from Jewish folklore that is usually made out of rock or some other earthly substance, and then somehow brought to life through prayer. It's not a film that's often talked about, even though he was the lead, he was the star in it. I thought it was a pretty decent movie. What'd you think of it?
I did too. And there's kind of a little bit of a tragic side note to that, in that Montgomery Clift died while it was being shot. And, Montgomery Clift was a very important part of both Roddy's life and Elizabeth Taylor's life. And as it happens, Roddy was in England shooting that. And I think Elizabeth was shooting Taming of the Shrew in Italy at the time. And arguably, they were two of the most important people in Montgomery Clift's life. And when he tragically died at the age of 47, they were not at the funeral because they were working.
Hmm.
And, that was the kind of commitment that they just had to things. You don't walk away from from a project where 100 people are working because of your private grief. And,
Yeah.
the show did go on.
Were McDowell and Cliff romantically involved at that time?
Not at that time, not by
Not
then.
that time.
I
Yeah.
mean, really, Montgomery Clift was really kind of Roddy's first love. But
Yeah.
but by 1967, They had long since not been romantic partners, but Monty was still a very important person in Roddy's life. And Roddy had actually been in Germany with him shooting a kind of low budget quickie thriller called The Defector, which was meant to be kind of like a proof of concept that Monty was well enough to actually make a movie, because Elizabeth wanted him to star in a film with her called Reflections in the Golden Eye, that after Monty's death, actually Marlon Brando ended up shooting. But he, along with a lot of other people like Elizabeth and Maureen Stapleton and others, tried their best to help Montgomery Clift, sort of fight his personal demons and his addictions. But in the end, there was no stopping what Roddy called a 10-year suicide that Montgomery Clift was on.
Clift died from alcoholism?
I think, he died of a heart attack, whether it was, brought on by phenobarbital or alcoholism, liver failure, sort of all of the above.
It wasn't that surprising, a death, given his problems?
No. In fact, very sadly, about 6 months after his death, Roddy's first book of photographs came out, and the idea of the books were that famous people would write about other famous people, and then there'd be a photograph by Roddy, and the only person that got an advance look at the essay that had been written about him was Montgomery Clift. And Roddy did that because he thought that Monty probably wouldn't be alive by the time the book came out, and he wasn't.
Wow. Yeah. So a difficult time in McDowall's life. A year after he makes this movie, The Golem, he is cast in the original Planet of the Apes, which comes out, as I said, a year later, 1968. How did that role come about for him?
He didn't audition for it. So it was, as they do with all movies, they make lists, they make offers. I am not aware of whether he was the first person they went after or the 10th person they went after, but he was delighted by the project and by the role. He just thought it was fantastic.
Mm. Did he also like the fact that Rod Serling, whom he knew, he had worked on Twilight Zone. He was on a famous episode, very good episode called People Are Alike All Over.
Yeah. Was
the Serling connection, was that something that you think made him more receptive to this role?
I'm sure that it had, some interest in terms of him reading it. By the time the script got to him, I'm not sure how faithful it might have been to the original Rod Serling drafts. The project went through an extensive development process and many, many, many drafts. But I'm sure it didn't hurt. It certainly. But it was. There was nothing about the movie that would have been thought of as sort of like genre related or something. It was a 20th Century Fox movie, a big budget movie for that year. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of my favorite sci-fi / horror films. Some would consider it more sci-fi than horror. I think there are elements of both. I'm curious, though, how did he feel about playing a role in which he's covered in makeup and costuming, and that's sort of, masquerading what he looks like? He embraced that? He was okay with that?
Well, the thing about Roddy that I find so endlessly sort of charming and fascinating is that he would look at something like that, and instead of going, "Oh my gosh, no one's going to see my face," I don't like that. What he would do is he looked at it and went, okay, so I'm going to be covered. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. How do I make this work? And he essentially invented a way of figuring out how to communicate by moving like prosthetics on his face to indicate certain emotions, because it didn't necessarily correspond to like natural emotion. It wasn't like, you're surprised and you lift your eyebrows, like it wasn't like that. Your face sort of didn't move in time to how it was that you were experiencing emotion. So it all kind of had to be very set out and very practiced. And he kind of came up with ways of doing this. And of course, crucially for him at the time and for most of the cast, he also figured out how they could smoke without damaging because that was very, very important. It's like, how do you get the cigarettes in there, and how to eat, and how to drink. And it was a very arduous process. And but he took it upon himself to kind of have like a little training school with some of the other actors, and showed them tricks that he'd learned about how to kind of indicate certain emotions and things, and how you could show things, and how you could smoke, the most important thing.
Man, he made it seem natural when he was performing that role. You almost forgot, this is a human voice underneath a costume. You almost forget about that watching him. He's so natural.
Well, the thing about being a natural, and I think this is true for a lot of people, I know it was true for Fred Astaire as a dancer, that the people who make it look really natural and like it's so easy get there by working really, really hard and rehearsing and planning it. And what Roddy would do, is he would make all of these notes and all of these thoughts about how it would go. And then he would sort of let go of all of that when he was actually doing the work, because then you have to be sort of present in the moment. It's kind of a method sort of idea. Roddy wasn't per se a method actor, but part of the tenets of that is being very mindfully aware and in the moment. If the actor that you're working with is giving you something, then you need to respond to that, not to some idea in your head of what they may or may not do. And, I think he was really good at that. And I think that really contributed to how natural he came across.
Yeah. So he starred in 4 of the 5 original Planet of the Apes films. Plus, you mentioned earlier, he was in the TV series. And the films included not only the first one, but Escape from the Planet of the Apes and Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, 2 films I really like. I think Tracy likes them too. Given this, it seems like he might not have been too concerned that he was going to be typecast as this human-like chimpanzee.
He was too busy working, and just to be, I count him as being in the second movie. I know he didn't play his own character, but he did have a voiceover in the opening. So, and even though it was recorded during the first movie and not during the second movie, it's still in the second movie. So I give him credit for that one too.
That was Beneath the Planet of the Apes, right?
Or Battle for the Planet. No, yeah. I will be honest.
The one with James Franciscus.
Titles confused.
Yeah, I think it's the one with James Franciscus where they're underground in New York City.
Yes, well, and they're aliens. I mean, they're not aliens, but they have that. They take off their masks and they're the nuclear bomb and all of that. That was the one where he didn't play that character.
Oh, it's interesting. I didn't realize he did the narration, or I forgot that he had done it. Now, in 1969, McDowell, continuing busy, he appears in a pilot film for Rod Serling's TV series Night Gallery. And this, of course, several years after he had starred in one episode of The Twilight Zone. We mentioned that earlier. I take it he was good friends with Rod Serling, because he seems to go back to Serling again and again.
I think they were, I don't think they were particularly, close, but I think there was a deep respect and admiration there. And, my gosh, when you look at that pilot for Night Gallery, because that also has the Joan Crawford, Steven Spielberg, episode in it as well. It's what a tour de force both of those episodes are. I think they're terrific.
Yeah, it is technically a film, even though it's a pilot, and it is terrific. I mean, the episode with him and Ozzie Davis is phenomenal. The Crawford episode is maybe not at the same level, but it's still very good. I believe it was Spielberg's first directing.
Yeah.
Crawford plays a blind woman in an apartment. And the third episode, the third part of it, is not quite as good, but it's not bad. It's an excellent film, and it's no wonder that NBC ended up picking it up as a TV series. You mentioned earlier, Samuel. No, go right ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention that. So William Ragsdale, when they were making Fright Night, he was, I guess he was the right age. His first memory of Roddy was from Night Gallery. And in that episode, Roddy was always following around the Ozzie Davis character, who I think it was called, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. It was an odd name, like Butterfly. Yeah, it was something like
Purefoy.
And William Ragsdale used to follow Roddy around on the set and calling him that, and and calling after him, and it just and to his and Roddy thought it was just hysterically funny. He thought that was very funny.
Yeah. Ozzie Davis played a butler who worked for McDowell's character's grandfather, who is dying, and McDowell wants to expedite his death so that he can inherit the fortune. I mean, Roddy plays a really despicable young man in that film.
Right.
And whenever he calls on Purefoy, he's bellowing, Purefoy, Purefoy. You're absolutely right. Yes.
And it's a truly scary episode where, you're kind of left going, oh my gosh, it had that perfect Night Gallery touch where the painting kind of comes alive, and and it is the plot twist, in and of itself. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's a great one. You mentioned earlier, and I think it's maybe Roddy McDowall's most underrated horror film. Well, I'm not going to say maybe. I think it definitely is. And that is the 1973 movie, The Legend of Hell House. And he plays a physical medium named Benjamin Franklin Fisher, and he is absolutely terrific in the role. Toward the end of the film, he has one of his classic Roddy McDowall, not diatribes, but sort of a speech, a declaration that kind of brings the whole story together. He did that in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes near the end of that film as well. And I think he did that a few other times in movies. And he was so good at kind of delivering these lengthy, emotional orations. Why does he and that film in general not receive more acclaim? I think you said he loved that movie.
Yeah, I mean, there are a million reasons why anything becomes popular or doesn't become popular. I didn't specifically look into that particular thing, but you always have to look at like what was released that week, what was released the week before, what was the distributor going through financial difficulties. You just never. It's always such a crapshoot, really. I don't think that it was released the same year that that the Poseidon Adventure was on its sort of juggernaut. So I
Yeah.
think if Roddy was disturbed by its failure to kind of catch on, I think he was pretty busy with the Poseidon Adventure. I mean, the Poseidon Adventure was the #1 movie at the box office 2 years in a row.
Really?
That was the movie that like ate Hollywood in its
Really?
moment.
That's interesting because I don't know that it's necessarily that highly regarded today. I enjoyed it, but I didn't realize it was #1. Never knew that.
Yeah. I mean, that's my memory. It may be that it was like #1 one year and #2 the next year or something like that. But it was
Yeah.
so phenomenally successful. And it was really an early kind of precursor to the kind of juggernaut that movies like Jaws would wind up becoming,
Yeah.
where it just kept playing and it went to more and more theaters, and just it became this kind of cultural moment. And that was something that started happening in the mid 70s. And really Jaws is
Right.
credited as kind of the first big super market saturation kind of blockbuster. But I think the Poseidon Adventure was one of the indications of that trend coming.
In that film, he plays a very likable guy. I think he was a waiter, or he's a
Yeah.
staff member on the ship.
Yeah.
And he's very polite, and he's trying to help the others as they
Yeah.
essentially are climbing. The ship is upside down, but they're trying to climb up toward the bottom of the ship to get away from the rising water.
Yeah.
And he does end up getting, killed in that elevator shaft accident. And I was heartbroken when I saw that, because he was such a likable guy there.
You and
but in
Pauline Kael. Famously, in Pauline Kael's review, she said, "Oh my God, of the big stars, the first one to die is Roddy McDowall, and then who cares what
Yeah.
happens to anyone after that?" Uh,
Right. I think I remember his character's name, Akers, I want to say.
Acres, yeah.
I can hear Gene Hackman saying that in my voice.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen that movie in a while, but it sticks with you because of McDowell. Legend of Hell House, he's a very different character. He's not a bad guy, but he's a kind of a complicated character. He's a little bit sarcastic, and he is very angry toward the end of the film. You mentioned that he took pride in that role. He felt that was a good performance, a good role, and you do touch upon that in the book, correct?
Yes, I think I do. Now I'm wondering, did I? I don't know. But I do remember in the research that he did look on it very fondly. It was right up his street, really. It was horror that was about the actors making it come alive and be real. And, that's a lot more interesting, I think, from an actor standpoint than something that's relying on, special effects or blood or gore or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. Well, one film that is not underrated, and one performance that does get its due, is the job that he does in Fright Night, which came out about a dozen years later, 1985.
Yeah.
And I think of all his horror films, it's probably the most beloved. He plays the role of this so-called vampire hunter. He's really just an actor. Peter Vincent is his name, and that was a tribute to Vincent Price. And at first, he's really just this fraudulent TV star. He's playing a role. He's not really brave or courageous. He's a coward, but he's forced to transform himself, and he does so very believably, into this courageous, heroic vampire hunter who's willing to help out this young guy, Charlie, and his friends. Any idea on how he felt about that role?
He loved that role. First of all, he was good. He was very close with Vincent Price. And, it was such an homage to Vincent Price. And I think he felt honored to be the one doing that. And And I think you can see in how clever he was in the work. You know, the big moment is when they're doing the scene and he's got like, and he is sees that Chris Sarandon has no reflection. And
Yeah.
in that moment, it's like the realization comes across through his eyes, and yet he doesn't give it up to, he doesn't give any kind of poker tell to the other characters. And so like you're experiencing him realizing the horrible truth. And yet he's giving none of it away, which I think is such a brilliant moment for him as an actor.
So he understood how beloved he was for that role.
I
Sometimes
think
actors
so.
don't fully appreciate the impact that they had, but you think in this case he understood, yeah, people really looked at that role in that movie in a special way.
Well, I think he did understand that, and I think although Roddy was not somebody that sort of lived in a nostalgic sort of past looking kind of way. He was very, focused on what's the project today? What am I doing tomorrow? He was very forward thinking, but I think he really appreciated the fandom. And I think he really took it very seriously that this is something that you're doing for the public. And if the public responds, that's something that's very, very special.
Yeah. I know Tracy has a couple of questions coming up, but just one more follow-up on Fright Night. I attended a horror convention in Syracuse last September. It was very good. And they had a 40th anniversary reunion on Fright Night. And several of the actors, including Stephen Jeffries, William Ragsdale, Amanda Burst, they were on the panel. It's one of the best panels I've ever seen at a horror convention because they got in real depth. And all of the actors, Ragsdale, Burst, Jeffries, they all made a point of saying how much that they admired Roddy McDowall, how he offered them advice, but did it in a way, it wasn't patronizing. It wasn't like he was bossing, but he was just trying to help them. He was trying to give them tips. And I got a sense that he really connected them, even though he was so much older.
Well, I think particularly, they were not children by then, but I think they were young enough that they touched something in Roddy, who, always remembered starting out as a child and what it was like to be so young and be on set and be faced with so much responsibility and so much pressure. And I think he made a point when he was working with younger actors to really, let them know that kind of he has their back. And, and it wasn't, it was never like, I know everything and I'm going to tell you how it is. It was just like, I see you. I see the responsibility that's on your shoulders. And if there's anything I can do to help, let me know.
That's so very kind. He sounds like he would have been such a lovely person to know. Like, absolutely. He's had such a long and just a very, I guess there's so many different kinds of roles that he's had in his career. In just your thoughts, do you feel that there was like one particular performance or film or even a part of his career that you feel maybe have been a little bit overlooked and you would just love people to learn more about it?
Well, his work as a child hasn't been overlooked by any means, but I would encourage people, see How Green Was My Valley, see Lassie Come Home if you haven't seen it, see My Friend Flicka. These were phenomenal performances. Maureen O'Hara's calls his work in How Green Was My Valley the finest work by a child in film history. And I don't think she's far wrong in saying that. It's extraordinary work. I'm also very fond of some of the he made some movies in the 60s that all kind of bombed. Movies like Lord Love a Duck, Angel, Angel Down We Go, The Loved One, some that were sort of famous flops. And I think they're kind of wonderful movies. Particularly Lord Love a Duck, where he's 34 years old and he's playing an 18-year-old, and it's kind of almost believable. And Tuesday Weld is wonderful in that. And it's just, it's very of its moment. It's like, it's in the mid 60s when they're kind of trying to figure out, what works for a young audience and what doesn't work. And, it was a film that did not find an audience, but I think when you look at it today, it's really wonderful. And there was a kind of spirit of rebellion and adventurousness that Roddy had in some of those movies that I think is a little surprising.
Oh, that is so cool. So I'm more familiar with his work when he was a little bit older. So I think I'm going to have to start going back in time and exploring some of those ones. And I think I'll start with that one. That sounds so cool. And just one more quick question from me. I did read that outside of acting, he also was like a huge photographer. He was into directing and producing and film preservation. Of those things, was there one particular area that you're aware of that he was just extremely passionate about?
Here's the thing about Roddy McDowall. Whatever he did, he was extremely passionate. And, I don't think, when he was taking photographs for his books or for magazine articles, I think taking photographs was the best thing ever. When he was acting is the best thing ever. When he was directing Ava Gardner and Tam Lin, that was the best job ever. And I really think that he had a talent for passion. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I think about all the time in my own life. I really do. I think sometimes, what would Roddy do? What would Roddy say? How would Roddy respond in a given situation? And it was an absolute genius, I think, for finding the passion and the love and the joy in whatever it was he was doing.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's beautiful. His photography book that we were discussing earlier, do you know, is that available, like either for purchase or where we could find it?
Well, there were 4 versions. It's called oh my gosh, I'm blanking. It's called double take, double act, double take. Wait, I have it right here. Wait, it's sometimes I'm like, okay, double exposure.
Oh,
So there's the first version, and then there's take 2, 3, and 4. And they're available on eBay. They're not in print anymore. Okay. But they're amazing books with beautiful photographs. And the list of, it's really a who's who of Oscar winners and other people who've written these essays about different people, and they're just fascinating.
Oh my gosh, that is fantastic. I am going to keep my eyes open for a copy of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Samuel, I was going to ask you to try to sum up the legacy of Roddy McDowall, but I think you did in answering Tracy's question there. The passion, the effort he put into things. He obviously took pride in whatever he did: photography, producing, film preservation, acting, and he was pretty much great at everything that he tackled. Talking about him as an actor, I don't know that enough people out there consider him a great actor. I certainly do. I get the sense that you do as well. Where do you put him on the pantheon or the ranking of actors? Very good, excellent, great, iconic. How would you assess him?
When you look at his work in something like How Green Was My Valley or Lassie Come Home, those are iconic, immortal performances. When you look at him in Planet of the Apes, I would say the same. When you look at his work in Cleopatra, when you look at his work in Fright Night, when you look at his work in, some of his television work is extraordinary. I put him in the first rank of 20th century actors. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's accurate. When he's in a movie or a TV show that maybe just happens to be on television or happens to be something on streaming, I tend to gravitate toward him and what he's doing on screen. And I guess that's what the great actors do. A final question for you, Samuel. What's next for you? You able to work on any other projects? Or are you so busy promoting this that this has become your obsession, as it does with many authors?
I'm working right now on the 4th season of a show on Amazon called After Forever. That will hopefully will be in production next year on that. We're writing the scripts now. And I just signed a deal to write a book about Shirley MacLaine and Warren Beatty that I'm calling Sibling Revelry.
Wow.
The first thing you mentioned, After Forever. Tell us more about that series.
That's a show starring Kevin Spiritus and oh my God, Mitchell Anderson. I'm just sometimes it's after midnight here, so you have to forgive me a little bit. It's a wonderful show. It's won 6 Emmys over the years. It's about a couple where one dies and the other is grieving and is trying to get over that loss. But we're bringing it back for a 4th season, which will be set in New Orleans, and we're working on the scripts now.
You write every episode?
I will be for the 4th season. The original creator, the co-creator with Kevin, died after writing the episodes for the 3rd season. When we shot the 3rd season, which is when I came on board, he had already passed away. And so the future of the show was really dependent on coming up with kind of a new direction for what that might be. But it's so resonant for, I think, all of us working on it, that it's a show about loss that has been suffused with loss, along the way. Yeah.
And then you mentioned that you just signed a contract or about to sign a contract to do a book on Shirley MacLaine and Warren Beatty. How is it possible? I did not know they were brother and sister. I did not know that.
I think a lot of people did not know that. And I think they are arguably the most successful Hollywood brother and sister in history. Arguably. Wow. There's some others out there. I'm also, I should mention also, I'm doing a follow-up. Last year I had a book out on Cesar Romero called The Joker is Wild, that focused on his life, starting from the vantage point of the Joker. And for the same publisher, I'm doing a book on Eartha Kitt, and we're focusing, on her as Catwoman, and then going into her extraordinary body of work.
Oh my gosh.
She was one of 3 different actresses to play Catwoman, if I'm not mistaken.
She was. And I will say my favorite, but she was one of 3. Yeah.
And as you hinted, you're doing this interview gracefully and graciously from Portugal.
I am.
Yeah. And it's late there.
It is. It is. It is. We are at the stroke of midnight as we speak. The witching hour.
Witching hour.
Well, the lateness of the hour has not shown in your performance. This has been a wonderful talk. We really enjoyed having you on. I'm looking forward to reading the book. I've just seen snippets and excerpts, and I've watched some of your interviews. And it's just, it to me, it's a fascinating subject, and it seems like you have tackled it very appropriately and then some. So we wish you best of luck with it. Roddy McDowall, An Actor's Life. It's available at Amazon.com. Do you feature it on a website too?
Yes, I mean, I have my own website with my own name, SamuelGarzaBernstein.com, and all the socials and stuff, and it's available anywhere books are sold.
It's a great topic and wonderfully explored by our guest, Samuel Garza Bernstein. We appreciate Samuel joining us on the program. We, of course, thank Tracy for her great work as producer, co-host, and many other things as well. We thank all of you for joining us in this Museum of the Macabre, or in this case, the Museum of McDowall, we could say. We hope to see you again next time, right here in the Ghostly Gallery.